Welcome back to Provident Vox. I'm Baron Aragni.
And I'm Baronessa Aragni.
And we're here again to peel back the veil on the hidden, the sacred, and the misunderstood. Tonight, we turn to a subject that often provokes curiosity and sometimes laughter. Among those outside magical circles, public exhibitions of magic and rituals.
Yes, the grand displays you see recorded on camera, plastered on documentaries, or paraded on social media. Rituals conducted not in shadowed sanctums, but under bright lights and for an audience's consumption. At first glance, it looks dramatic, full of pomp and spectacle. Yet beneath that gloss, it raises questions.
What is truly happening in those rituals? And what impression does it leave upon those watching? For many, these staged ceremonies push them further from believing in magic at all. It begins to look like theatre rather than spiritual art.
And that's the crux of today's discussion, the difference between showmanship and substance. When is a ritual performed for power, for change, and for the spirits you work with? Or when is it merely a performance for the crowd? And more importantly, why does that difference matter?
And at the end of this episode, we'll also share a simple healing spell using the Sator Rotas square, showing you just how simple magic can be. Last week, we found ourselves watching a documentary series on Korean shamans, what is often called mudang practice. The series followed the lives of different clients who came with their troubles, a family misfortune, an illness, a string of bad luck, spiritual attack, and so on. And then, of course, it showed how the shamans work to remedy those problems.
We watched it partly for curiosity's sake, and partly for the sheer anthropological interest in how other cultures frame the same questions we all wrestle with.
Suffering, fate, and spiritual affliction. But let us be honest, whenever we approach something like this, it is always with a large pinch of salt.
Indeed. Yet the curious thing about experience, real lived experience, is that after years upon years of practice, you don't need anyone to explain what is happening in those rituals. The drums, the chants, the offerings, you can see the form and you know instantly the function. It becomes almost second nature to recognize the logic of a ceremony, why they call upon a particular spirit, why they make a certain gesture, or why the ritual takes on a given rhythm. And it's fascinating to notice that though the culture, language, and even theology may differ, there are still common threads, echoes of something universal in the human approach to magic.
But let us be clear before we go any further. What we are about to speak on is not an attack on Korean shamanism or any other path. Far from it. Every tradition has its roots, its powers, and its mysteries. What we are addressing here is something else entirely. The intrusion of spectacle. The difference between ritual as sacred art and ritual as a piece of showmanship for the camera.
Yes. Because time and again, whenever we watch a ritual that has been filmed, edited, packaged, and delivered to the public, we notice the same things. The focus shifts away from the spiritual reality and onto the performance. The result is that to an outside observer, it often appears laughable or hollow, something to be dismissed rather than respected. And that, listeners, is what we want to get into next. The contrast between authentic practice and the theatre of ritual, and why it matters so much.
The problem with rituals that are recorded or even those observed live by an audience is that the entire focus shifts. Instead of the ritual being about the work itself, the actual magic, it becomes about the show, the spectacle, the pomp. The true current, The intention and the force being directed is pushed into the background, and what rises to the surface is nothing more than theatre.
And of course, we understand why this happens. People who come to watch a ritual expect drama. They expect fireworks. They expect the doors of the heavens to split wide open, the gods to appear in thunder and fire, miracles to unfold before their very eyes. They expect something supernatural, something visibly otherworldly. And when those things do not manifest on cue, they begin to suspect fraud, which is ironic, isn't it? Because often the absence of spectacle is exactly what proves a ritual's authenticity. The quieter, the subtler, the more unseen it is, the more true to its nature.
Exactly, and so to avoid being called imposters, many practitioners put on a show. The elaborate rituals, the wild gestures, the costumes, the color, the chanting, all heightened, all exaggerated, so that the client or the spectator walks away feeling as if they've witnessed something otherworldly. But in reality, the current of magic is not in the performance. It is in the unseen movements, the inner work, the focus, the will.
Now, someone might argue that the pomp exists for the sake of the spirits themselves, or the deities being called upon. And yes, in some traditions, form and grandeur do serve a role in showing reverence. But then one must ask, why in that case are there spectators? Why does the sacred act need an audience? The truth is, it doesn't. The performance is not for the gods. It's for the people watching.
And then lies the problem. The more pomp, the happier the spectators. The grander the performance, the more valid it appears as a practitioner. But that is an illusion, a game of appearances. And in playing that game, the very heart of magic is lost.
Now here's where it gets interesting, because for as many people as there are who adore ritual spectacle, who equate the flashing colors, the roaring chants, and the sheer theatrics with the validity of the ritual and the skill of the practitioner, there are just as many who are repelled by it. For them, that same pomp and pageantry doesn't inspire belief, it drives them away.
Exactly. To such people, all that noise, all that nonsense, all that contrived drama becomes proof not of power, but of fakery. They watch and think, this is ridiculous. Clearly magic doesn't exist. Clearly it's just a performance. And so the very thing meant to convince ends up confirming their skepticism.
So let's address the obvious question, because we know it lingers in the minds of many who are listening. Is magic real? The answer without hesitation is yes. It is as real as breath, as inevitable as the rising sun. Believe us, if it were not, we would not have spent the entirety of our lives pouring ourselves into it. Who would waste decades on an empty dream?
And what about spirits? Are they real? Again, yes, absolutely. We've worked with them, spoken with them, called upon them, warred alongside them. Their reality is unquestionable to us, and it remains so no matter how others may doubt. But here's the caveat. Are all rituals you may witness, whether recorded on camera or staged before your very eyes, real? Not exactly. And if we are being brutally honest, more often than not, no.
That's the bitter truth. The ritual on the screen is not necessarily the actual true ritual. What you see is often not what is truly happening. And so, discerning the difference between the authentic and the performative becomes one of the greatest challenges for any seeker.
Let us give you a concrete example. Suppose we perform a ritual for ourselves, something personal, something necessary. If you were to walk into our altar room in the middle of it, you would almost certainly be disappointed. You wouldn't find us dancing around or choirs chanting or thunderous drums shaking the walls. What you would see is us sitting quietly in the dark, perhaps for half an hour, perhaps less. Silence, stillness, that's it.
And why? Well, partly because of experience. There was a time long ago when we too performed elaborate ceremonies with all the trappings. Grand circles, drawn-out evocations, the whole spectacle. But over time, as our power and faculties grew, we discovered that none of that was necessary. It was scaffolding, useful in the beginning, but it wasn't the house itself. Once the foundation of inner strength are laid, you don't need the scaffolding anymore.
Exactly. If we had an audience standing right there in the altar room, it would make no difference. They would still see the same thing. Stillness, silence, focus. No theatrics, no fireworks, just magic. Direct, immediate, unadorned. Because when you know what you're doing, you don't need any of the excess.
Even when tools are involved, even when the operation calls for candles, sigils, or certain ritual instruments or ritual structure, the work remains deceptively plain. No pomp, no dazzling colors, no blaring music, just the current moving, unseen, through the hands and the will of the operator. And this too is one of the reasons why we no longer provide photographs or video recordings of the rituals we perform on behalf of clients. People sometimes request them, hoping for something dramatic, but the reality is, there's nothing cool to see.
And that's the irony, isn't it? The more genuine the ritual, the less entertaining it appears to the uninitiated. The spectacle might be absent, but the power is not. On the contrary, it's stronger than ever.
This brings us neatly to something rather important. In that same documentary we mentioned earlier, the filmmakers brought in an anthropologist to give her perspective. They asked her directly if she believed in spirits, and her response was very telling. She said that wasn't actually what matters. What matters to the client is whether they believe the ritual will work.
And that statement reveals far more than she perhaps intended, because if the effectiveness of a ritual hinges solely on belief of the client, then what we are talking about is not magic at all, but theater. It becomes a psychological exercise, a placebo. The ritual works only because the client convinces themselves it has.
Now contrast that with real magic. True ritual, true talismanic work, true evocations, and true operations of the spirit world do not require belief. The results will manifest regardless of whether anyone believes in them or not. Magic is not powered by the opinions or feelings of spectators. It is powered by force, by will, by the unseen currents and intelligences that move through the work.
Exactly. If something only works because you believe in it, then you are no longer dealing with magic. You are dealing with psychology. And there is nothing wrong with psychology. It can be powerful, it can be transformative, but it is not the same as magic. Confusing the two is one of the greatest errors of modern spirituality.
And that confusion is perpetuated precisely because of ritual spectacle. People are trained to equate pageantry with power and belief with reality. But magic is not subject to belief. Belief may comfort the client, but the ritual either works or it does not. And that truth stands, regardless of who happens to be watching.
This reminds us of another moment we witnessed in a different documentary. A man went to a renowned temple, famous for giving protective tattoos, talismanic marks said to shield the wearer from harm. These tattoos were highly sought after. People swore by them, claiming miracles, claiming their lives has been forever changed once the ink was etched into their skin.
Now, this wasn't some casual walk-in. The temple made it clear. Such tattoos weren't handed out every day. They were rare blessings, only granted to a select few after offerings and long deliberation. And so, after much waiting, this man was finally accepted.
But here's a detail that struck us. Before the needle touched skin, the monk turned to the man and asked, "Do you believe this tattoo will protect you?" And the man, with all the fervor of someone passing a test of faith, said yes immediately. The tattoo was granted, and he left beaming, certain that he now carried divine protection etched into his body.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because if that tattoo truly was a talisman, if it genuinely carried magical force, then why would belief matter? Why would the monk need to secure that yes from the man before beginning? A talisman by its very nature should function regardless of belief. Its virtue resides in the design, the consecration, not in the psychology of the wearer.
And that's the heart of the issue. The moment belief becomes a requirement, we are no longer speaking of magic. We are speaking of psychology, suggestion, expectation. The tattoo may well embolden him, give him courage, reduce his fear, but that is not protection. That is the mind soothing itself. If it requires his faith to function, then it is not a talisman. It is a placebo.
And this is where so many are misled. They confuse the effect of belief with the effect of magic. They overlap the two as if they are one and the same, but they are not. The true talisman, ritual, or whatever does not care whether you believe in it. It does its work regardless, because its power is rooted in something beyond mere human psychology.
Many cultures and traditions are guilty of fluffing up their operations for the sake of spectacle. Shamanism, many branches of it, ATR systems, temple cults, public ceremonies you see on television, Taoism, even contemporary occultists are guilty of turning ritual into theater. It becomes almost impossible for an onlooker to tell whether what they're watching is genuine, working, or only something staged to produce an emotional or mental reaction. The trappings blur the line until the difference vanishes for most spectators.
And the sad truth, the disappointing truth, is usually the simplest. If there is overt pomp, if the ceremony is built around visual drama and audience excitement, the chances are very high that what you're watching is not actual magic. Not because spectacle and power can never coexist, but because the more the performance is aimed at impressing observers rather than enacting an operation, the more it serves psychology and social validation rather than metaphysical effect.
We aren't saying there are never exceptions. In the rarest instances, a highly theatrical ritual can also be a genuine potent operation, but those moments are exceptional, not the rule. In practical terms, 99% of what you see in public ritual is there for the sake of the watchers, not the work, The elaborate structure, the blaze of color, the dramatic gestures, they're designed to make people feel something, to persuade them that the practitioner is powerful. That persuasion is a currency. It wins clients, it secures status, it keeps the show going.
That's why discernment matters. If you're someone who watches rituals and wonders whether magic is real, don't judge by spectacle alone. Learn to look for the subtle signs, the economy of action, the repetition and precision that suggest a trained will, the after effects that persist beyond the moment of pageantry. Real work often leaves no immediate fanfare. It leaves results, whether the client believed in it or not. And those results, not the theatrics, are the true measure of efficacy.
In fact, we believe this is one of the reasons why we ourselves are sometimes overlooked. In a world that thrives on spectacle, silence and bluntness really catches attention. We don't parade ourselves in cemeteries draped in black, claiming to raise the dead with a camera crew in tow. We don't upload grand ritual productions filled with smoke, ominous chanting, and all the gothic cliches that play so well on social media.
Exactly. And because we refuse to indulge in that nonsense, some people may dismiss us. They assume that because we do not show them something dramatic, that there must be nothing of value happening at all. They expect spectacle, and when they do not get it, they walk away unimpressed. And that is fine. We are not here to impress the masses.
It is the same with our writing. We speak bluntly without fluff, without trying to paint ourselves as grandiose hierophants with endless secret ceremonies. We write from experience, not from fantasy, and that directness, though valuable, does not sparkle like pageantry. For some, it is not enough, but we would rather be overlooked than be fraudulent. We would rather be dismissed for plain truth than adored for false theatre, because at the end of the day, we know what works and we know why it works. And that certainty is worth infinitely more than applause.
And let's not forget how much our bluntness tends to upset people. We don't whisper sweet comforts into ears simply to keep them warm. We don't tell people what their aching hearts or aching egos want to hear. And because of that, the reactions we receive are always polarized.
Yes, people either love us or hate us. There's really a middle ground. Some call us wise, seasoned by years of practice, unafraid to speak the truth plainly. Others call us rude, abrasive, even cruel, because we refuse to soften what must be said. But that, dear listeners, is the cost of honesty.
And honestly, we would not have it any other way. We are not here to coddle. We are not here to play the part of spiritual entertainers. We are here to tell you what we know from decades of lived magic. If that offends someone, so be it. For others, that same bluntness is the very reason they respect us.
Love us or hate us, at least you will know where we stand. There is no mask, no performance, no pandering, only the truth as we have lived it. And in the world of magic, that is far rarer and far more valuable than pomp and spectacle. Which brings us to something that matters far more than appearances or opinions: results. At the end of the day, the only true measure of magic is whether it works. And not just work, but works consecutively. Not whether it looked dramatic, not whether it sounded impressive, not whether an audience applauded, or whether you look cool performing it. Results. Did the ritual achieve what it set out to achieve? Did the talisman perform its function? Did the spirit fulfill the charge? That is the yardstick, the only one worth anything.
And that is why bluntness matters. Because truth in magic is not about polishing a persona or dressing up an act. It is about what manifests. You can call us rude, you can call us unpolished, you can call us unentertaining. None of that changes the fact that what we do produces results. That is the difference between performance and practice, between illusion and operation.
Yes, spectacle may gain admiration, but admiration does not make a working effective. Praise does not make a spirit obey. Belief does not conjure power. These things stand on their own legs, separate from the theatre of human approval.
So if there is one lesson we wish to impress on you in all of this, is that appearances are nothing and results are everything. You may find our way disappointing to watch. You may even find us unpleasant to hear. But if you seek the real, if you want to understand what magic truly is, then strip away the show, silence the noise, and look only at what manifests, because there and only there lies the truth.
Let's still go back for a moment to psychology versus magic, because this is where so much confusion takes root. Psychology relies heavily on belief. If a ritual looks powerful, if it feels dramatic, if it overwhelms the senses, then the participant may convince themselves it must be effective. That conviction alone can shift their mood, their confidence, even their decisions. And let's not forget the various hermetic laws that come into play when your internal perception is changed. But that is psychology. It works because of how the mind perceives it.
Magic, on the other hand, is not beholden to belief. A ritual may look dull, plain, and even disappointing to the untrained eye, yet it still moves forces in ways that alter reality. True power does not care whether it looks impressive to you. It is not waiting for your validation. It either manifests results or it does not, whether anyone finds it beautiful, frightening, or boring.
And here lies the danger. People equate appearance with efficacy. If it dazzles, it must be real. If it's quiet, it must be fake. That inversion is precisely what keeps so many trapped in spectacle and far from substance. They chase the image of magic instead of magic itself.
We're talking about you people as well that likes to post pretty photos of your dolled up altars on social media, but nonetheless, flawed perception can deceive. It can make you dismiss the real and embrace the false. That is why discernment is everything. Learn to look beyond the senses, beyond the pageantry, and ask the only question that matters. Did it work? Not did it impress me, not did it feel dramatic, but did it bring about the change it was designed to bring? Because that is the dividing line between psychology and magic.
Yet again, let us be clear, we are not saying that in genuine rituals nothing spectacular ever occurs. Quite the opposite. Sometimes, during the course of ritual work, the most astonishing things do happen. Phenomenon that shakes the air, presences that can be felt so strongly they are undeniable. Movements and manifestations that leaves no room for doubt. These things exist. They are part of the reality of working with spirits and forces beyond the mundane.
But here is the distinction. Those moments are not conjured on command, like a stage magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. They arrive when they arrive, often unexpectedly, sometimes in ways that even the practitioner cannot fully anticipate. They are gifts or signs or side effects of the current moving, not scripted performances for an audience.
Exactly, and that's what separates authentic ritual from theatre. In real magic, extraordinary things happen when they happen, not because someone demanded they must, and certainly not because a camera is rolling. The attempt to force spectacle cheapens it, and more often than not, replaces it with mere acting.
So yes, sometimes magic is spectacular, but it is spectacular on its own terms in its own time. And when you encounter it, you will know. It won't be choreographed, it won't be polished for display, and it won't need to be. It will simply be real.
As an example, imagine calling upon a deity known for their association with dogs. You're in the middle of the evocation, the night is quiet, still, and suddenly every dog in the neighborhood begins howling at once. No reason, no warning. There is shivers with it. That is not theatre. That is a sign of presence. The ripple of power spilling into the mundane world.
Or consider calling upon a sky or weather deity. The day has been clear, bright, and cloudless. You begin the rites, and as the words fall from your lips, the wind rises. Clouds gather, the temperature shifts, and within the hour the sky turns stormy. That is not coincidence. That is not just the weather. That is the current of the deity breaking through, reshaping the very atmosphere in response to the call.
We have seen such things more than once. All candles in the room dying at once without the air currents or winds to have caused it. Voices audibly whispering right by our ears. The physical sensation of hands upon our shoulders or visible presence behind us. Animals behaving with strange coordination. These are moments when the other world brushes against this one. Not for spectacle, not for human admiration, but as a natural expression of the force being worked with.
And yet, none of these things can be demanded on cue. You cannot stand before an audience and say, "Watch, the dogs will howl now," or "Look, I will make the sky storm in 5 minutes." That is not how real magic works. It happens in its own time, in its own way, and the power lies precisely in the fact that it is authentic, unscripted, and undeniable.
Once we performed the ritual with the client present in the room. On the surface, it was meant to be simple enough, a spirit directed towards a certain outcome. Nothing elaborate, no wild spectacle, just a straightforward working.
But what unfolded during that ritual was far from ordinary. We had barely finished the call when the air shifted, heavy and electric, and then without warning, the client, who was seated on the opposite side of the chamber, was physically thrown backward. Not nudged, not tipped, thrown. They hit the wall with such force it left no room for misinterpretation.
The look on their face was unforgettable, wild-eyed, pale, as though they had glimpsed something no human was meant to see. And then, right then, they bolted. Fled not just from the room, but from our property in absolute terror, as if chased by death itself.
This is the point we are making. The ritual itself was plain, silent, and focused. Hardly the sort of thing to impress a spectator. Yet within that stillness, within that seemingly uneventful operation, came one of the most tangible and undeniable events that person could ever witness. No amount of theatre could have manufactured that moment.
And that is the reality of true ritual. It doesn't need pomp. It doesn't need spectacle. A simple operation done correctly can break open the air and produce physical manifestations that shake everyone present. That is magic. That is power. By the way, in case you were wondering what brought that violence forth, the story that client told us was not the whole truth. They have painted themselves as the victim, when in fact they were not. They wanted an entity of justice to avenge them, when they were the ones in the wrong. We love it when people try to lie to us.
So listeners, you see the contrast we've been tracing throughout this discussion. On the one hand, there is spectacle, pomp, pageantry, and theatre. On the other, there is true magic. The one dazzles the eye, entertains the audience, and convinces by noise. The other often looks like nothing at all. Silent, still, unimpressive, yet it is the one that actually moves unseen currents and brings real change.
We are not saying that wondrous things never occur in ritual. They do. Spirits make themselves known, the world bends in strange and undeniable ways. But the point is that these things happen in their own time and in their own manner, not on command, not for the sake of an audience, and certainly not to impress a camera.
Magic is not performance. It is not theatre. It is not psychology dressed up as mystery. It is a force, ancient and relentless, that does not wait for human belief or applause. And if you chase after pageantry, you may miss it entirely.
So if you take anything from this episode of Provident Box, let it be this. Do not mistake silence for emptiness, nor plainness for weakness. Real magic rarely advertises itself, but when it strikes, when it manifests, you will not need anyone to explain what just happened. You will know.
So to prove something, here's a simple ritual of healing by using the ever-popular Sator Rotas square. It can be found simply by Googling it or by looking at the cover image for this podcast episode. It's there.
Okay guys, we personally tried this ritual and we know it works for a fact, and it works very, very well. Okay? So to use this ritual is the essence of simplicity itself. Draw the square by hand using red ink on paper or cloth, preferably consecrated. After writing it, either place it beneath the afflicted individual or wrap it in white cloth, tie it to the individual's wrist, ankle or forehead. While doing so state, Sator, he who plans healing, Arepo, he who brings it near, Tenet, he who holds it firm, Opera, he who does it true, Rotas, he who moves it forth. Afterwards, recite Psalm 91 and 121. Leave it with the afflicted individual for 9 days, then burn it on a Friday.
And that's it. It's that simple. As mentioned, we've used this specific method numerous times, and even others like it, using the Sator Rotas square to miraculous effects. No pomp, no trance work, no drums, just plain and simple magic. And with that, we thank you for joining us tonight. May your discernment sharpen, may your practice deepen, and may you never be fooled by spectacle at the expense of truth.
Thank you for listening, guys, and subscribe, like, and share this podcast so we can grow it as much as possible. This has been the Baron and Baronessa Ragni, speaking plainly as always.
And always remember, as above, so below.
As within, so without.